All right, we are live, everybody. Cody, is your camera working?
Uh,
Doesn't appear to
Probably.
be. Doesn't
Let
appear
me
to be.
see.
Yep.
Oh wait, I just have it turned off. There we go.
All right, there we go. So now we are live, everybody. Welcome to the Gunner Technology Livestream, a weekly tech talk for non-techies and techies alike. I'm your host, Derry Merkins. With me again, CEO of Gunner Technology, Cody Swan. How's it going, Cody?
Sorry, I am. There we go. I was hearing the live stream play back in my headset, so I was like 3 seconds behind you.
Losing your mind.
Yeah.
The winner of the Country Shore giveaway this week is Chuck R from Tampa, Florida. Big shout outs to Chuck R. Thanks for signing up. And anyone who is interested in the Country Shore giveaway can sign up on our Facebook page. So make sure to
Yeah,
do
we had a
that before
lot. We had
next
a
week's
lot
episode.
this past week. It was we're at the expand the numbers in our random number generator.
Yeah, so your odds are reduced, but you should still sign up anyway. Let's see. So this week's topic is actually one that's near and dear to my heart. Near and dear to everyone's heart, or at least it should be. So our topic this week is the what I've titled this episode as the future of employment. And the question this week, and I actually did some prep for this episode, so I'm ready to go for this one. But the question to you is, what jobs, I'm trying to remember because I don't want to switch tabs, but what jobs are likely to be automated in the near future?
Beet farmers.
So, look out, beet farmers.
Dwight Schrute is his days are numbered. No, I mean that's the interesting question, and everyone sort of seems to have an opinion on what the next industry or job function to be automated is. It's there's certain attributes that make a job or an industry ripe for automation. Redundancy is a big one. How often you do the same thing repeatedly. So sort of like data analysis, data entry. How much hardware is needed to automate the task. So, for example, with data entry, you don't kind of need a robot sitting there typing at a keyboard. You can scan existing PDF files and input the data from there. Obviously, the cost and complexity is another manner, and how much discretion is involved. One of the ones I know we'll talk about sort of here in a little bit is a diagnostician. But a surgeon, well, a surgeon is certainly not safe from being replaced by machines. There's a little bit of discretion involved. Whereas if you cut into the patient and something isn't like what you anticipated, there has to be discretion involved there. And machines can be programmed to learn discretion, but it's a lot more difficult than kind of just if X do Y kind of thing.
So if I can jump in real quick, this is I have a bunch of numbers here, and this is from an essay that came out, or a research study that came out, I think it was 2013, called The Future of Employment. So I have here a dozen jobs that are 99% likelihood to be replaced. I think it was within the next 10 years or something along those lines. So we have data entry keyers, and that's 200,000 jobs. That's what you were talking about, which is basically easily replaceable by something reading a PDF of a bunch of numbers instead of having a human being do that.
Yeah, I mean, the example of that is if you work at a doctor's office and another doctor's office emails you a PDF, you either print out the PDF or you look at the PDF on screen and rekey the information that is on the PDF into your own system. That's kind of the data entry we're talking about there.
Exactly, and that's pretty easily replaced. Library technicians. Did I say the numbers for the data entry keyers jobs? That's 200,000 jobs.
200,000, yep.
Library technicians, that's 200,000 jobs. Those are people who scan books in and reshelve them. New account clerks, which I had to look up, but that's people who sign you up for credit cards and checking accounts and stuff like that. That's 40,000 people. This is one I didn't even know still existed, but photographic process workers, that's people who develop film.
Oh gosh.
25,000 people still do that.
No offense to anyone who does that out there, but I just picture Robin Williams in that. What was that movie?
Yeah, what was it? Negative or what was it called? It had some dopey camera related name.
Yeah, I'm gonna look that up while you're talking.
Yeah, look that up. Okay, so tax preparers, 70,000 people. Cargo and freight agents, those are people who actually like load stuff. onto like onto freights and work at docks and stuff and unload and load cargo up. 90,000 people do that.
Wow.
This one's awesome. Watch repairers is apparently rife for automation, and there are 1,600 people who repair watches. So it's a small number of people. Insurance underwriters, that's a big one. That's 100,000 people.
Oh gosh, yeah, totally.
This one's interesting. Mathematical technicians, and apparently these are people who apply standard mathematical formulae to various sets of numbers, which apparently is a thing that people do. Only 510 people do it, but
okay,
that's easily automatable. This next one's a good one because it's a slight aside and it'll make sense. We had a pipe at the end of our driveway that a tree root grew into. So we had someone come out and fix that. And I was reading this. I read it as sewers, hand. And I was trying to figure out what the heck job that would be. Like I imagine somebody who would climb down into a sewer and fix stuff by hand. But it's actually it's sewers, hand, which makes a lot more sense than sewers, hand. So this is people who sew stuff.
Okay.
Which is 6,500 people. Title examiners for when you buy a house, 55,000 people, and telemarketers, 215,000 people are telemarketers. And that's something that's obviously, they work off a script. And this is already happening. You probably receive robocalls all the time. And that's just...
I did just 5 minutes before we jumped on the call.
So that's something that is easily automatable and definitely going away. And that was just 99% probability. And the way the study did it is they basically had metrics for... like you were talking about, how much of the job is routine, how little changes from day to day, how complex it is to automate it, what kind of machinery is needed, stuff like that. So that's 99% probability. There were 170 job categories with greater than 90% probability of being automated. So just the 99% probability was over 1 million jobs that could be automated. And I don't know how much it would be for the greater than 90% probability. I had a couple other, here's a couple of interesting ones. And this will lead us to other topics too. But they said a mental health counselor was only a 0.5% probability of being replaced.
Really?
And that's 140,000 people. But 0.5%, we already have chatbots, which is basically artificial intelligence that in this case performs the function of mental health counselors. There's one called Wobot that I was looking into. That's like $40 a month, and you sign up and you can basically just text with it, and it tries to make you feel better.
Right.
Commercial drivers, they only had that at 18%. Remember, this is 2013, so this is before.
Okay, that's a good
driverless technology has come a long way since then. But commercial drivers is almost 2 million people. Oh, and driverless trucks is already it's already, largely there as far as putting trucks on the road that can drive themselves cross country.
It's really just, and I know we'll talk about kind of the barriers to this, but it's really just a regulatory issue at this point. The technology is there. It's just the government that's holding it back.
And I think also there's the hesitation that there's still a sense that we want people handling complex situations that arise. So if something goes horribly wrong that you probably couldn't plan for, you want a human being there to be able to step in when the AI fails, or if it does fail. I mean, I think that the fallacy there is that AI would outperform a human being in that situation. There are numerous examples of humans being put in situations that they never would prepare for, doing exactly the opposite of what they should do and causing way more damage than would have been caused. Like I think of there was an Air France flight that was flying from Brazil to France that crashed in the Atlantic Ocean. And what happened is, I think one of the readings, there's something called pitot tubes that measure temperature and wind speed and stuff like that. Yeah, exactly. So I think that froze over and failed, and one of the co-pilots freaked out so badly that he just started he took the plane up to 45,000 feet in a steep ascent, and the plane stalled and just crashed into the ocean. So I mean, even the sense that we want human beings to be there to make the right decision doesn't necessarily work, because human beings often make the wrong decision.
It's a false sense of security, because humans often most humans underperform or misperform dramatically in stressful situations or emergency type situations. It's kind of funny because, you know, I have my pilot's license so I can fly drones. But you go through the whole pilot's license course and yada yada yada, and 99% of the course is like what to do if every machine goes wrong, if every machine fails, like what do you do?
And people don't realize how much of flight is machine based already.
Right. I mean,
almost the entirety of it.
well, yeah. I mean, actually, the entirety of it is like people say, oh, except for takeoff and landing. That's pretty much automated. I mean, that is pretty much automated. Literally, the pilots are there just to make sure nothing goes wrong, and it's just like a false insecurity. The same reason that it's kind of weird that people have a fear of flying because they don't feel like they're in control. Well, like, dude, if you're in the cockpit, you're not going to do anything, man. In the case of an emergency, like just because your hands are on the wheel doesn't mean you don't have any less control than you would. So it really is a false sense of security in that respect of having, you know, a human there in case of catastrophe.
Unless your name is Chesley Sullenberger and you land a plane in the Hudson River.
Exactly. And then you're like vilified for doing so afterward, which is.
Yeah. Wasn't that weird? Here's the last one I'll do. They said umpires and referees, there's a 98% chance of them being automated, which is so interesting because you think about like even calling balls and strikes, that there's no reason why that shouldn't just automatically happen because they have the technology now, except for that.
Right. And it's weird because now we've kind of gone along the lines of talking about every kind of reason why things won't be automated. You know, I was going to say that farming is something that could be easily automated. Yep. But we have tradition, we have regulation, we have unions, and we have kind of psychology as the kind of the only reasons why these aren't moving forward at a faster pace, and all of those are artificial. None of those are.
Sorry, before we dive into each of those, just one quick shout out for people who play tennis. I don't know if you've seen this because I know you play tennis, but there's a gadget called In Out, which is kind of an unfortunate name, but it's a little device that you put on the net, and it actually can call balls in or out.
Yeah,
with like 99% accuracy, and it only costs $200. So people should check that out if you're a tennis player. I've had so many fights over line calls. It's just, it's worth probably $200,000 instead of $200. But let's get into it. Let's talk about the reasons why stuff won't be automated, even though I think the reality of the situation is literally everything can be automated at this point.
Right. Oh, and it's really easy because you know, currently in the news right now is the job growth in the United States, which again, no one is ever going to say that job growth is a bad thing. The thing that I would caution against here is the jobs that are really coming back to the United States are manufacturing jobs, which are one of the easiest jobs to replace through automation. I mean, they largely manufacturing has, and that's the weird thing is there's all these big news about, you know, this Chinese solar company is going to build a manufacturing plant in the United States. Apple's going to build a manufacturing plant in the United States. Manufacturing plants don't create that many human jobs because largely these things are automated, and the rest of it will be automated in the near future. So it's kind of weird where, I mean, I would rather us as a country focus on the jobs that are going to take advantage of the automation rather than the jobs that are fighting against automation because they're going to kind of lose. So
talk about the jobs that will take advantage of automation. That's an important distinction to make.
Yeah. So like, for example, and this is just a contrived example off the spot, but you take manufacturing, instead of giving jobs to people who actually manufacture whatever it is, the doohickey, we'd be much better served having people to kind of think about how to expand the role of the doohickey, or what else the doohickey can do, or how else we can position the doohickey, rather than just keep having humans making the doohickeys. Humans shouldn't be wasting their time making the doohickeys, which machines can do much better and much quicker. Humans should be using what strength they have over machines right now, which is kind of discretion. So let's say the doohickey keeps, I don't know, the engines on the SpaceX shuttle cool. Well, it's like, wow, I wonder if we could put this in refrigerators as a cheap way to keep our food cold, kind of thing. Like that's kind of what humans need to be focusing on right now, is innovation, creativity, and discretion. And to your point, machines can replicate creativity, by the way, but we still have an advantage kind of in that arena. We're making stuff. We don't have an advantage at all.
Yeah, I guess the two rejoinders to that would be the number of jobs you're creating for people to figure out doohickey work is going to be drastically lower than the number of people actually making the doohickeys. It might take 100 people to make one of them, whereas you might need 3 or 4 people to create ideas for doohickeys. And the other thing is, some people just aren't creative. I mean, creativity isn't, evenly distributed across the population. There's some people who are incredibly creative, and there's some people who have absolutely don't have a single creative bone in their body. So they're sort of going to be left in the lurch a little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely not an easy. I mean, if I had the answer, I'd be making a lot more money right now. But the thing is like another thing. If we talk about industries that aren't, or job functions that aren't easily replaceable, again, things that require discretion, like a salesperson, for example. They're kind of reading the feedback, visual, non-visual, verbal, non-verbal cues that they're getting from their potential prospect, and they're adjusting their proposal or pitch kind of on the fly. Things that machines aren't yet great at. They're not better than humans at so far. So, we're able to manufacture a lot more things. That means we need a lot more people to sell them. And you're right. Like the people who are generally build things in a plant don't have those sales skills. But if we think, okay, we have 2 years, we have 3 years, it would behoove you to start trying to learn those skills so you can take advantage of them if and when your job function goes away.
Yeah, through my reading, I came across basically 3 factors, and you sort of touched on all of them. But what I have listed is creativity, relationships, and unpredictability. Those are the 3 things where humans still shine. But the sad thing is we're shining less and less on each of those fronts. So creativity, you already talked about. Creativity is a weird one because, I guess artistic creativity is different than maybe call it situational or societal creativity. Because I know in the artistic realm, there's been AI bots writing classical music that people can't tell the difference between. There was one that wrote Chopin nocturnes, I think, or something like that. It was like 3 Chopin nocturnes versus 3 AI nocturnes, and people had no idea which one was which. The relationships one is really interesting to me too, because I know Japan is sort of leading the way on all this stuff, but Japan already has robotics working in nursing homes. And I'm not talking about, there was the famous case of, I think they gave like a toy seal to hospice patients for them to look after and care for and stuff. And it greatly improved their happiness, even though they knew it was a robot. It just it gave them comfort to be able to take care of something. But what Japan has also done is they're introducing actual robotic care workers to take care of people. And it might just be like an elderly thing that maybe they're happy to interact with anything at that point. But and I don't mean that facetiously. I mean, it's actually like loneliness is a huge issue with the elderly. So, but they actually build relationships with robotic care workers who are still clearly robots, but there's this weird ability for humans to empathize with non-humans. So I'm not even sure we have the relationships one covered. And just real quick on the unpredictability thing, unpredictability, weirdly enough, is algorithmic in the sense that your ability to react to unpredictable situations relies entirely on experience. And the fact that, machines already have a huge advantage because they're going to have these massive databases of lived experiences, or lived in the sense that they're alive at all, but they'll have a wealth of information to draw on in terms of how to react to certain situations. So there might be initial failures on that front, but as the data pool grows and grows, they'll be able to cover more and more seemingly unpredictable situations with a much higher rate of accuracy. Well, so all 3 are pretty shaky at best.
The unpredictable, unpredictability one, machines are going to overtake us eventually because they're connected. So, for example,
exactly my point. Like their wealth of data is
right.
The amount of data accrued by basically every machine that's accruing data, because there's going to be a central warehouse for it.
Right. So let's take, for example, if I'm in an active shooter situation and I end up dying, even if I don't die, and I sit you down and I tell you everything about it, it really does not help you much if you're ever in an active shooter situation. My experience relating that to you doesn't help you at all. But if a machine can record all of the data from an active shooter situation, another machine who is then in the next active shooter situation has every bit of information that the previous machine experienced from being in an active shooter situation. They've literally, the second machine has literally already been in an active shooter situation. So they do know how to handle it.
Yeah. And that's one of the primary ways that machine learning works, is just iteration and learning from mistakes. So recently, Google's company Deep Dive trained an AI chess player to basically become the world's best chess player in a matter of 4 hours, and that was just by playing itself. So you give this Deep Dive AI agent the rules of chess, and you let it play against itself and learn what works and what doesn't over cycles, millions of cycles over the course of 4 hours, and there isn't a single chess program that can even come close to touching it after 4 hours. Yep. So like the ability for AI to collect and process data, it largely makes it unbeatable in the cognitive realm.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And the other thing I think is important when we talk about this type of stuff is to point out that we're not sitting here on an ivory tower thinking that our job functions are safe. I mean, every job function is at risk, and it's not even, a lot of people think it's like a blue collar versus white collar thing. It's really not. There are a lot of white collar functions. We talked about airline pilots, financial advisors. They're not stock pickers anymore. Machines are picking stocks. They're managing relationships, and that's it. You have one of the big ones is legal researchers.
I was just going to say lawyers are in huge trouble. And yes. I actually have a quote from Richard Susskind. He's a British lawyer. His quote was, "So a lawyer today doesn't develop systems that offer advice, but the lawyer of 2025 will." So his idea is that lawyers won't actually be giving legal advice. They'll be developing law systems that give legal advice. And that's the weird thing, is you develop it once and you send it out to the world. And you've replaced the jobs of X number of lawyers who would have to do that on an individual basis.
Exactly. I mean, and you look at even like, I was thinking of one like the programming team at ESPN, which I use because we have an example. It's not exclusive to ESPN, but
we could have been replaced with one of the simplest AI agents
100%
ever developed.
But if you're looking at programming, makes decisions on what's going to air, when it's going to air based on data. And so a machine can in real time, like just based on strict data, decide what program is going to be best at what time in front of what viewers, way better than a human ever could. So it's not at all like this blue collar is doomed and white collar is going to be safe for a while. There's no differentiation between the two, kind of collars, if you will, when it comes to machines replacing humans.
Well, that's what's so interesting about this time, because I think it's called the Luddite fallacy, or I think it's called the Luddite fallacy. But basically, the Luddites were the ones who destroyed all the looms when they were first created, because they were replacing all the jobs of weavers and people who worked with cloth. And so the idea is that technology replaces certain jobs, but it creates new ones. And that's been the history of technology for the course of the Industrial Revolution. I think what's different about this time is the fact that technology is replacing cognitive jobs. It's replacing cognitive work. It's not replacing someone's job who screwed the bottle on a bottle of Coke. It's replacing someone's job who reads an X-ray and determines whether you have pneumonia or not.
Or it's replacing the job of the person who invented the ingredients for Coke. I mean, that's the thing, is like it's going all the way up the chain. So it really is a revolution like we haven't seen. And that's why we can sit here and point out certain things. But to your point, what was relevant in 2013 has changed so drastically in the course of 4 or 5 years that we kind of give a 10-year timeline that could be accelerated greatly with even the smallest bit of innovation.
It's rapidly approaching a 5-year timeline. We actually have an awesome question from Daryl. So a big shout out to Daryl for this question. But her question is, what do you do when people lose jobs as far as tax revenue goes?
Oh, well, hold on. Shoot. I just accidentally.
Daryl, it's a really good question. Cody's
Here we go.
Cody's pretending he didn't hear it.
No,
okay, so Daryl's question is, she wants to know what happens with tax revenue when jobs are replaced, which is a really interesting question because if you don't have people making money, where the heck are the taxes going to come from?
Well, that wouldn't. Yeah, that is a good question. Like I've always been in favor of a consumer tax, which is basically just an increase on durable goods that are bought and sold. It's like when you go buy a car, there's a 6% sales tax or whatever. Imagine if there was like a 20% sales tax kind of thing.
So if I could jump in real quick with your consumer tax idea,
yep.
If people don't have jobs and you need a job to make money, and right. you need money to buy things.
However, the funny thing
happen with the consumption tax.
Yeah, the funny thing about that though is, as we've seen with innovation, the standard of living for people goes up. We talk about this all the time. Like we talk about the big separation between the rich and the poor right now, but the poor have luxuries. Compared to 30 years ago, 50 years ago, the poor are living in the lap of luxury. Even people who are in the lowest income category have iPhones, for example, where, just they have a lot more of the comforts, the creature comforts that the poor 50 years ago didn't even have. So my point being is the innovation, and again, it's one of those things where it's like I don't have a concrete example, right? I haven't had this figured out, but innovation has a way of creating wealth and creating spending. So that's why I've always thought that the consumer tax has a longer shelf life than an income tax, because you're right. I can see income levels staying the same or going down overall, but I don't see our consumer spending change. And again, that means a lot of debt spending, obviously, but I think we're more likely to see a decrease in income than a decrease in consumer spending.
I'm shocked that you can't solve probably the most complex economic question of our time in
30-minute podcast.
3 minutes. Yeah, I expected so much more from you. It's tough. It's a tricky issue because stuff is going to change way faster than people realize, and we sort of need to deal with it sooner rather than later. And maybe the consumption tax might be a good way to go, just because you're betting on the fact that people are going to spend as opposed to the fact that people continue to be able to earn as much, which seems less likely.
I just think that humans are not good at saving. And so once they achieve a certain level of comfort, they're not going to want to let that level of comfort go. And as we've talked about, government, large businesses, they do whatever they can to keep that wheel turning. So if they have to inject cash into the economy that will then be spent, which then tax dollars goes back to the government, that's going to happen. I don't know how. I don't know how the debt structure works today, even. So I mean, I know how it works, but I don't know how it continues to actually hold up in today's world. So I imagine it's kind of the same thing where, if people are in mass out of work, that corporations, government will do whatever they can to keep money in their pockets. So they keep taking money out of their pockets, kind of thing, and keep, money is the oil that keeps the gears turning. So somehow they're going to keep people spending money.
So the spice must flow like Dune.
Yes, exactly.
I was going to end it, but real quick, and real quick, I say, this is like a crazy complex issue.
1 hour photo was the name of the movie. So I keep forgetting this. Or 1 hour,
hour,
yeah,
1 hour photo. That was a weird movie.
So weird.
as far as the consumption tax goes, and as far as consumer spending goes, how do you see 3D printing and VR technologies playing into that? So I know Zuckerberg has the example of, this is the example I always quote, but it's, why buy a 100-inch TV when you can throw a VR headset on and sit on your, probably cheap IKEA couch or whatever, and see before you the most glorious home entertainment system that's ever been created?
Yeah, I don't know, other than there is no reason other than if you want to
People like having stuff. Maybe people like the physical,
like you and I
thing.
Maybe we're an example. When we're sitting around watching a movie, we like to make fun of it and then like look at each other and laugh about it and gauge reaction in the room. But that's a very contrived example.
Yeah. The desire to make fun of movies will save the U.S. economy.
Yeah. Well, and it's one last thing on that is that what you're talking about is one of the strengths of humans is relationships. And as you said, we're actually getting worse about that because we're replacing actual interaction, actual relationships with virtual relationships.
I mean, we're talking right now via computer.
Yes,
we're not sitting
exactly.
in the same place.
So the things that we're good at, we're willfully becoming worse at.
All right. Well, on that joyous note, I think that's going to wrap up this episode of the Gunner Technology Livestream. Check out the blog post on our website, gunnertech.com. Look out for the podcast on iTunes. Check out our
ebook. A newsletter also. A newsletter.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we have a new newsletter. So keep an eye out for that. Our JavaScript ebook will be up on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iBooks, and everywhere else ebooks are sold. Make sure to sign up for the Country Shore giveaway on our Facebook page. And tune in next week, Thursday at 1 o'clock, and catch the Gunner Technology Livestream. Thanks, everybody.